Welcome back. We're talking depression today, and from now on, we're going to be starting to talk about the most important aspect, and that is prevention and, of course, treatment. With me in the studio is Prof. Melvin Freeman, Chief Director of Non-Communicable Diseases within the Department of Health, and he's, of course, sitting in the middle. And we're now joined by Thabang Tlaka, who's sitting here next to me. Thabang is the poet that you saw earlier, and in fact, he's a clinical psychologist. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And by the way, thank you for that wonderful rendition you did earlier.
Thank you very much.
All right. And of course, we're still with Nkini Phasha, who's board member of SADC. Now, as you know, we have a live studio audience, and I believe that somebody has a burning question or statement to make. It's your opportunity, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Phasha. I just need to find out what is South Africa doing to upscale the treatment for depression in South Africa, especially in townships and in rural areas.
Okay, excellent question. Can I ask that we keep that in mind and talk about it, deal with it when we talk depression in the next segment? All right. Perhaps let me start with you, Thabang. We're talking prevention. I mean, clearly this is the most important as far as I'm concerned, because I think the first thing that you'd want to do is, of course, having understood the causes and risk factors, to say, how can we ensure that we don't get as many people, slipping into depression as possible? Let's start at the workplace. Your views.
Yes, we always say that prevention is better than cure, because it's much easier to sort out the issue before it even starts. So, I mean, you do have people who are depressed at the workplace. A point was made that depression is an illness, and it can be moderate, it can be mild, it can be severe. And so sometimes what we need to be mindful of is we are all at risk depending on what we are exposed to. So if we're at work, we are not resting. We see young people say they are slaying these days. You are slaying, you're not resting, you're not eating well, you leave issues. You do not discuss the issues that bother you immediately. You end up finding yourself with relating to people in a difficult way. You start feeling down, you avoid issues, and you could be depressed. So we need to talk about our issues, develop a positive mindset, because life is full of challenges. And if we're not mindful of the fact that we are to constantly engage and start learning how to see situations in a solution-seeking way. If we don't have that mindset, if we forget that depression is an illness, if we do not rest well, if we do not interact with other people, human beings are social animals, so we need to interact with people. So when we engage in those things, when we do sports, when we live healthy, balanced lives, we find that then people are not at risk of being depressed. But if we ignore those kinds of things, then I think we start having a problem.
All right. Prof, I mean, obviously we know that it's depression. We don't want to simplify things, because it's an interaction of, genetic, social, environmental, and all sorts of issues. But your comment in terms of,
well, the point that I really wanted to make is that we have to be very careful that we don't just ask the individual to change, that we also actually look at the environment that creates the stress which leads to the depression and so on. So, when you're talking about the workplace, a person's depressed, say, we'll get it together. But in fact, maybe this person's been made to work 15 hours a day in an environment that's not conducive, that demands are made of them that they can't reach. It's going to start preying on them. And so when we're looking at prevention, we can't just look at saying, what should the individual do? We got to look around the person. And you're talking about the workplace. I'm even more worried about people who are not employed at all. Unemployment is a major risk factor.
And absolutely. And also, I mean, another dimension is, you look at the world of social media. I mean, my colleague here make mention of, the young people, referring to slaying. And I mean, that is one of the probably the most popular hashtags, you know, on social media. But what social media does is that it actually takes the person out of those, you know, interpersonal, you know, relationships, those, you know, being sociable, having those real, tangible relationships, you know, with other people, which then will actually then also allow you to be able, you know, to engage, allow you to be able to share, you know, whatever emotional or psychological distress that you actually might be going through. But also, you know, substances. And I mean, we're living in a country where it's easy to access, be it alcohol, be it any form of recreational drugs. And, you know, and those we know that they do have a negative impact, not only, you know, physically, but also physiologically. And that can actually, you know, drive one to ultimately developing a type of a mental disorder. So it's very, very important that we, you know, we also outline that as part of, you know, the preventative, you know, measures that needs to be taken.
Clearly, also at a personal level, whilst I understand, obviously, you know, we need to look a little broader, but there's relationship issues, you know, within families, there's financial issues. There's a whole notion of how people deal and react to stressful situations. Your comment on that?
We could be visited by depression in the relationships that we have, if there's some sort of experience that we have, the trauma. So we live in a country where people could get hijacked, raped, mugged, those kinds of things. And if we have illnesses. So if we are not mindful then of those things, if we are not mindful of those things, that we need to be able to protect ourselves, we need to relate with people in a useful way. If we are not mindful of those things, we find that then we tend to become a bit depressed. But I think an element of being proactive in educating people about the risks, about proper healthy standards of living, how we can be productive, balanced men and women in society. I think when we engage in that kind of thinking and educating and relating with one another, and as professionals also connecting, and connecting not just the workplace, but how the family also engages. I think most of the time we look at it in that sense. So all these things, if we are educated and we are able to interact, connect the dots from the home to the workplace, I think we can have some headway in preventing depression.
All right. Perhaps let's get, I'm sure that there must be someone, you know, amongst the audience here who perhaps has examples or views in terms of prevention, perhaps using an example of how he or she might have been, you know, affected, and could use that example of, you know, sharing with us to say, okay, this is how you can prevent it, because in my case, this was the situation. Anybody?
My name is Shalene Zunkel. I'm from the SA Federation for Mental Health. I think specific to address stigma, and also with the theme Let's Talk, I think the most impact that's made in addressing stigma is actually for people with depression that actually come out and talk about it. I think I also just want to make one comment around the impact on the global economy of depression, where the Health Organization stated that it costs the global economy $1 trillion every year. And if we invest $1, we get a return of $4 for treating depression.
Very, very interesting. Thank you so much for your comment. Now, I believe we have Derek on the line, also from KZN. Welcome to Health Talk, Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek. I'm actually going through a condition called spinal. I'm going through it for now 5 years. And left hand side of my body, and I'm full of pain all the time. And my employer tells me that I must come to work because of, I don't have any days due to me.
Okay. All right. And that's obviously stressful for you. Thank you very much. We'll try and get the guests to comment on that. But I believe there's somebody else who wants to say something else amongst the audience. Yeah?
Yes, my name is Phasha from the South African Federation for Mental Health. I just need to find out what is the impact of culture when we're talking about depression in South Africa.
Okay, excellent question. Let's give it to you, Nkini.
Totally. I mean, it's such a great question because we do know that definitely, cultural beliefs, do play a role in how, individuals or communities are receptive when obviously, dealing with issues pertaining to mental illnesses. Some of the cultural beliefs also fuels, the myths around mental illnesses, which in turn fuels the stigma associated, with mental illnesses. So embarking on, being on shows like this and going into our communities and hosting workshops with members of the communities to educate them about what really it means to have a mental, disorder. You are not bewitched. As also we find out that, some of the cultural beliefs, state. So that also then starts to change, the picture and really empowers the people to understand that actually this is a mental, it's a medical, disorder, just like any other, disorder.
Right.
But also some of, maybe talking about men, which is, a topic that I'm very passionate about because we are seeing that in our society, men are not encouraged, to talk about their emotions, to talk about their psychological distress. So that is also part of the culture that is inculcated in us as, as individuals that, you are raised to as a boy child to believe that, you can conquer anything, you do not cry, you do not show emotional distress, and that has got very severe consequences when one transition into adulthood.
All right. We've run out of time. But I'd like us to respond to Derek in 15 seconds. I mean, it goes back to that question of the workplace. Has a chronic condition, is expected to be at work all the time. 15 seconds, a response there?
What I want to say is that there is a very close connection between depression and a number of different chronic conditions. And that's exacerbated when the workplace takes decisions around that chronic condition, such as this one. But I think that perhaps what he needs to do is to recognize yet another condition which needs care and treatment. And the response really has to be to a multiple group of disorders. And the bosses need to understand that.
Absolutely. All right. Time for another quick commercial break. When we come back, we now talk treatment. Please stay with us.
MedShield Medical Scheme doesn't just cover you when you're ill, we'll help you stay well. At MedShield Medical Scheme, we don't just talk health, we do health.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 Al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back,